Hey gang, I'm on the bakery server today because just over a week ago, Snarple here below me streamed a building event in which a whole bunch of us built a hub for the new Build Battles mode here on the server. And of course, I contributed. Being a structure builder myself, I built this organic because why the heck not? I didn't really know what I was thinking, but I like the way he looks, and I figured he could do with a friend. So that's our task for today. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit more about this guy. Specifically, I'd like to credit Wordle for helping me out with the legs, and Imagine Finishing for building these lovely little sandals, as well as a mystery person for adding the spore blossom here in the eyeball. I originally only had the glowberries, and then someone came along and added this, and I really like the pop of color it gives, so I've decided to keep it. Oh, and the shading on his sides isn't complete. Because he was smushed up against some buildings, so I didn't bother. And so I don't know if I'll finish that today, but the platform also is kind of sketchy. I just kind of built it really fast. I wasn't really paying attention. It's not symmetrical. Also, before I move on, and I promise this is the last thing, I have 3 tools that I am going to be using. One of them is Axiom. It's a mod that is compatible with the server, and among other things, it gives me my infinite reach, so I can do this, which is very handy for shading. And also, I will be using World Edit and Archon, both of which are free to use on the bakery. So, I'm thinking my new pot, the friend for this guy, is going to sit on the ground and be slightly bigger. So if he does have limbs, it's going to be arms and not legs. Or maybe it could be legs, but I don't really feel like building more legs, so no, it won't be. And he's going to face this way. Clumsy drawing. I meant this does not tell you anything. I'm sorry. Here, let me try again. He's going to be facing this way. There we go. Beautiful. And to start off with the shape, I'm not going to do anything super intense. I'm just going to make a single slice, and we're going to use an Archon command called revolve to get things started. When I say slice, I do literally mean slice. We're just going to be building basically half of a 2D projection of the widest part of the pot, and that's it. I'd probably just why am I overcomplicating? A slice is good enough to explain. I don't need to explain what a slice is to you. You know what a slice is. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I'm just eyeballing the size here. I haven't actually measured, so it might turn out to be smaller, and in that case, I will just move the center further that way. But we'll see how this turns out. Alright, now for the moment of truth. We set our second position up here, and I already set my first position here. And then I go / revolve, and then a big number, 120 or something, and that'll cover the whole area. Most of the whole area, I guess. Enough to see if we're on the right track. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. You'll notice right away that this shape here is not nearly as smooth as this shape. Now, part of this was hand smoothing. However, there is still a shortcut that we can take. So I'm going to undo the revolve, and we're going to do a slightly different revolve. Let's say with instead of 120 segments, we do 8 segments. Like that. This will give me a framework through which I can build a loft. Okay, so what's a loft? It's another Archon tool, and this time it lets you create a 3D curve using a lattice of selected points. So you can see here that I'm using my revolved bits as horizontal framework, and then I'm selecting a vertical layer every second block, which should hopefully give me the curve that I want, or at least one that's close enough. I'll link a tutorial in the description if you want to give this a try for yourself. This is clearly screwed up, but I do want to try it. / loft. Oh, that's font. What the heck? Loft, set, hand. Ah! That's not what I wanted at all. Not even close. Okay. Technical difficulties. Now, you'll notice there's a bit of an error. It says cannot add position to the same location. I think that's a bug because I've tried to add, 2 positions to one location before, and it's just not let me. But here you can see it's adding the position every time, so I think it's fine. Anyways, loft is done. I think it's not screwed up this time. You can see it looks a little bit cleaner. So now we go / loft set hand, because I'm holding the blue. And there you go. Now, clearly this needs some hand smoothing, but you can see the shape is a lot more defined than what it was before. It's got some more curve to it. Although I might fill this area out a little bit more. Yeah, this can be done by hand. So I've been working on this side and then periodically rotating it around to get the full picture. And then I've been keeping an eye on the edge here and flying around to see if it remains consistent. You can see I've still got a little bit more work to do. Here's the current iteration. I think it's going pretty well. I might actually make this the final iteration because I'm getting a little bit tired of doing this. I'm not looking for perfection, just something to get by. And I am considering splitting each of these faces down the middle and moving the corners in to make it a little bit thinner so that the face that will reside on this side of the pot can fill up more of the space without having anything empty. You can see that there is some empty space, but it's most of the center that it takes up, and I'm worrying that the width and height combo of this pot, oh yeah, and it's looking pretty square from this side, is going to be too much. I'm working on it. You know, I didn't really consider what the pot would look like from above, and now that I am looking at it from above, I can see that I went a little overboard with the shaping on the sides. So I've made a copy, and I've gone and shaved off an entire layer. Now, it is a little bit square down here, right here, but I don't think that's so bad. I think that's fine. I'm okay with it. Also, I did attempt taking out the centerpiece and moving the corners in like I discussed earlier. That's what these two copies are. And although the 2-block center would be fine, I think at this scale, it's not the end of the world. I think I do want to attempt to work with this one because I have an idea for a wider face that will hopefully give this guy enough of his own personality to differentiate him from his little friend here. I'm struggling a lot more than I thought I was going to in this video when it comes to explaining my thought process and building decisions. One, because they're not my familiar territory. I'm not super experienced with them. And two, it feels like there's less to explain. When I build a structure, I have a whole bunch of things that stem from other things to talk about. So when I discuss a room layout, I talk about what aesthetically I want the room to look like. I talk about the purpose of the room. I talk about what sort of thoughts or feelings I want someone to have when walking into the room, and so on. And that dictates my whole process. With the organic here, with this face, what do I say? I want big chubby cheeks, I want a nose, and I want a big mouth because I want him to look kind of intimidating and not quite human. And that's where it ends. Maybe it's just me being inexperienced, or maybe there's just a different set of things to explain that aren't as easy to articulate. I don't really know at this point. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So this guy is already asymmetrical just a little bit. It's hard to notice when you glance at him, but if you look closely, you can see that this cheek is different than that cheek. The nose is shaded differently, and in fact, the legs are completely different. I did the legs differently, though, to fit between buildings. The face is just a general style that I decided to go with. And keeping with that, I decided to make this guy asymmetrical as well. So the nose is kind of pushed off to the side, and then one of the horns is lower than the other. One thing I'm a little worried about with this design is that it's all kind of blended together a little bit, as in the cheeks don't have as much definition as I wanted them to have. Here's an older version of the face up here, and the cheeks actually extend an extra block out, but I found that the side profile was just a little bit too flat. This guy's still a bit flat, but I think it's improved by shaving the cheeks back. However, that kind of sacrifices some of the look from up here, which is of course especially easy to see when you zoom right in on the cheek. There's only one block of depth here, which is effective. It's better than nothing, but with such an exaggerated facial structure, it's nice to have extra depth. Of course, we have to keep in mind that this isn't the only angle we'll be viewing the face at. We'll want to see it from the side too. So hopefully shading will help me accentuate this a little bit more and fake the space, I guess. Speaking of shading, I want to color this guy blue. So it might seem obvious at first to choose a palette where you start with something that's dark blue and then ends with something that's light blue and make a gradient connecting the two. However, let's consider the palette for this guy for a second. So with this guy, I had a brown shadow layer, then a rough red gradient, and then pink highlights. And notice the separation. It's not random. I chose this deliberately because, well, brown is not a shade of red, it is a shade of orange, and this pink cherry wood doesn't really blend all that well with the red glazed terracotta. There almost needs to be another block in between here that we don't really have access to. I mean, we could use a target block, but that can get messy up close, and that's not the point. The point is that I have a set of lowlights, a small gradient to go between them, and a set of highlights that I use to kind of sketch where shadows would be on the figure. Things don't have to be smooth as much as they have to be convincing. And we can create some pretty stark contrast lines with just these colors. For example, you can see over here, let me zoom in, that the shading underneath the chin goes directly from the red to the brown to accentuate the shape of the head. All that brings me up to here, where I've devised a new palette using this as a bit of a skeleton. I've got the same brown lowlights that I have over there, and I've decided to use blue concrete here because I want this to be a very rich blue, so hopefully this will take up most of the space on the build. Then I've gone with warped planks because they have a slab variant, so I can do some smoothing, and then because of the warped planks I chose cyan concrete powder to give me sort of a gradient. Now, cyan isn't really the same color as blue, so that can be debated, but hopefully it's enough to kind of fake what we're going for. And then finally I've got prismarine bricks as the highlight because they have a slab variant. There isn't really any other good blue slabs available, so if this doesn't work I might just end up going with quartz or maybe light blue concrete powder. I really hope to use this because I like the slabs and a lot of the highlights are areas that are slabbed. But if this is what happens, then I might end up just doing this combo here. Okay, now I'm curious. Does this actually work? No, it doesn't. It's actually lighter. Okay, good to know. There you go. See, I make mistakes all the time. Actually, you know what? It's almost lighter than that. Anyways, we're still dealing with the problem I said earlier. I wonder, though, if TNT would work. Maybe? If you fly far enough away, it might. I actually think the solution here would be to use glass, maybe. So let's try that. Please bear with me as I get distracted. If I do that, is that going to... Yeah, okay, that's what it would take. What you're seeing here is Axiom's shading prowess that I mentioned earlier. It's the infinite reach paired with a fast place mode and a replace mode that just replaces the blocks I'm looking at instead of placing blocks on top of them, which is a little bit more precise than what world edit brushes would allow me to do. Unfortunately, there's no undo because I'm doing this directly. There's no world edit involved, so I have to be careful, but it's still pretty handy. I should also mention, as a point of clarification, that I have chat messages turned off. I'm still on the bakery, I just figured you'd like to see my video without people talking covering half the screen. Unsurprisingly, a lot has changed with the palette and everything. This was what I would have had without any outside intervention, and then Weeping Angel suggested I try tube coral instead of blue concrete powder for some better blending, and I think it blends better, but I'm not really sure which one I still prefer. So why don't you let me know which one you prefer? A lot of homework in this video. I suppose I should probably explain myself a little bit more thoroughly. So I quickly abandoned the prismarine blocks because they're just too green, and I found that the light blue concrete powder was also a little bit too warm, so ice was a nice colder alternative. That's the blue ice here. And then for the gradient, I actually found that surprisingly lapis ore worked the best. There aren't that many blue blocks between, coral and ice that really work very well. Diamond ore came to mind, however, it had the same problems as the concrete powder in that it was just a little bit too warm feeling. The rest of these blocks are fairly self-explanatory. I find that blue concrete and blue glazed terracotta look just about the same from a distance, so I ended up just using them kind of interchangeably just to provide some character, so that's why this side's all covered and that side's got the blue concrete still. Then lapis, blocks seem to blend nicely with the coral. It blends less nice with the concrete, which is why the coral was such a great suggestion. I've decided against using limbs. I'm not going to give this guy any appendages. And I've also decided to choose this because as much as I like the desaturation of the blue concrete powder, I do enjoy how much better this guy blends. Now, even though we're not doing appendages, we still have one more thing to do, and that, of course, is to fill these pots with something. When this guy was in the city, I didn't really have time or room to build anything other than just some grass and leaves and amethyst crystals for flowers. But now that they're open up top and have room to breathe, it seems kind of inadequate just to fill them with grass. So, we're going to figure out what the heck to put into these guys. I am getting a little bit tired of this project. That's nothing new, because it happens anytime I make a video on something. It's just because making a video takes like 5 times as long for me, you get a little bit ornery with the results and just want to move on to something else. So the quality of these plants is going to suffer as my patience dwindles, but I'm okay with it. That's it. It's life. It happens. And there are still some fun shortcuts that I've discovered along the way. And we're done. That's it. I'll give you a quick close look at these flowers because you might be curious how they're made. If you're wondering why the coral isn't changing, it's because we have a thing called Builders Utilities on the server that prevents block updates, so the coral doesn't know that it's out of water. Here are the blue flowers too. I thought it might be cool to give each pot the opposite pot's color in the flowers. And finally, for those of you who are curious, here's sort of a visual demonstration of the shortcuts I took to build these trees. If I had spent more time or cared more, I guess, about them, I would have made them a little less noisy. They are quite hard to look at when you look at them up close, but luckily we're not looking at them up close. We're looking at them from quite a distance, and I think the shading works a lot better from there. Now, obviously, this step is just a bunch of world edit commands. I did go in and do some shading by hand with the birch sapling, which is fantastic, by the way. I didn't know it was such a good shading block for plants. This is the first time I've used it. So there you go, learning things right to the very end. Anyways, where is my perch? There's my perch. I'm going to use this for the thumbnail. If you notice, the signs on the horns de-render, which is a little unfortunate, but luckily they don't have too much of an impact. So my goal right now is, hopefully, as I conclude this video, that this little screenshot thing will appear as one of the auto thumbnails and I won't have to make my own. So yeah, let's wrap this up. I find it's almost always rewarding in this game to step outside of your comfort zone. Even if nothing tangible comes of it, the experience is usually worthwhile because it gives us more opportunities to try new things, I guess. Today, I look at the result of a very silly idea to stir up a structure-oriented space with something outside my comfort zone, and I can't help but feel proud of both what I built and the commentary that I've made surrounding it. Now, if I had made a structure instead of my weird pot guy with legs, I probably still would have been proud of the result, but I most definitely would not have made this video. So, thank you for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Don't let my earlier complaining fool you. I did enjoy this project. That's pretty much all I have to say. I think this thumbnail thing is nailed down, so bye-bye now.